the exhibition stems from the war in Ukraine and overviews the impact it has on Lithuania, but also on the wider region and Europe. And it also kind of goes back a bit in history, finding ways how to retell stories which were perhaps not properly heard until now. And simultaneously it tries to look ahead in the future and envision and try ways of survival and resilience.
The title of the exhibition is Borders are Nocturnal Animals. And we actually use the title in French and in Lithuanian. Les Frontières, sont des animaux nocturnes. It's an extract from a longer sentence, which is Borders are Nocturnal Animals. They move while we sleep. We should always stay alert. We borrowed this from a text by Luba Jorgensen, who's an academic teacher in history of literature based in Paris. She wrote this text after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. It's a text that combines a very didactic historical approach to the events that brought to the current war, but also a very personal approach with memories from her childhood, with different nightmares. And so we wanted to maintain this double approach in terms of the exhibition, having something that would be both factual but also poetic. This is a collaboration between CADEST in Paris, the Palais de Tokyo, and the Center for Contemporary Art in Vilnius. For the first part of this project, we have a double exhibition that just opened. So we have the space of CADEST, which is a rather small, intimate space, and on the other hand, the space at Palais de Tokyo with brick walls, very visible infrastructure of the building itself. And we try to present different generations of artists in order to show several perspectives on these narratives.
The eldest generation is the people who were born and lived throughout the Soviet occupation. And then there is kind of a middle generation who were started their careers in the 90s, so basically just after Lithuania regained its independence. And then there is a third, the younger generation, who don't kind of have this direct experience with the Soviet occupation, but has it through the memories and of their relatives, through the landscape and other things. So it was important to have these kind of three different voices, three different experiences of, the same things. Not happening in Lithuania, so it's kind of, there is a certain gap and distance how we experience it, and there is like imagination and memory and certain, I guess, illusions involved, and everyone reacted like one way or another. And even though it is not directly presented, but there is like a clear sense of threat and anxiety and the memory of previous wars, and this kind of understanding that it is a moment of a radical change and nothing will be the same as it used to be.
The way for us to address this was more through emotion and atmosphere rather than direct representation of the war. At CADEST, we tried to build a little bit of momentum. It's a very linear space, so we've created dialogues between 2 or 3 pieces at a time, in order to enable the visitor to see connections. We have this idea of artifacts through the stained glass of Danilo Alkin, but also Maria Olszewskaita's glasses, which are also relevant of a certain tradition of crafts from the Soviet period. You have the idea of surveillance with Anastasia Sosunova's work, but also with the soldier present in Demontas Narkevicius installation. And then there's a strong relationship also to nature, because Lithuania was for a very long time ruled by pagan traditions. So you have the work of Émilie Škarnulytė, of course, but also the bird of Demontas Narkevicius. On the other hand, the question of borders is very present, and we're really talking about questions of territory, of power dynamics. You can see it directly in some works, such as the map at the end of the exhibition by the Urbana Studio, but you also can feel it in a more downtoned way. So the herbs collected by Émilie Škarnulytė come from the land where her grandmother used to live. It's on the border with Belarusia. because these herbs are medicinal herbs, but they also are close to the enemy, close to a nuclear power plant, so potentially contaminated as well. Many works are playing with this kind of duality of meaning.
My name is Anastasia Sosunova and I am an artist living in Vilnius. I work with different media, from graphic arts, which is printing plates and sculpture, but also video installation. My main interest is actually quite personal stories, or very culturally specific local stories that relate to the whole world. In this specific work, I am interested in Lithuanian DIY retailer senukai and its spiritual doctrine that not a lot of people know about. My focus there is the relationship between capitalist kind of corporate system and spiritual aspects or mysticism of our everyday experiences. In this exhibition at Cadiz, I'm showing 3 pieces that all have the same title, which is the apple of my eye. It's home security cameras that are as relics, sacred objects enclosed in armors that were handmade, handcrafted out of steel and brass. Security camera is promising us safety and care, but at the same time it is radiating violence and surveillance, control even. We don't even notice them in our lives. However, when filming for the videos that I was making, I would constantly feel threatened by the surveillance cameras, pointing my own camera into them and feeling the thought in the back of my head, does he see me? Can he see me? And this is something interesting, I think, in our relationship to authority and authority figures, how even if they do not care about us, even if they do not see us, even if they don't even know about our existence, they live inside our heads. Lithuania is not experiencing war itself as a country, but it is living in this kind of collateral, almost atmosphere, I don't know, with this ongoing feeling of threat felt in the air, in people's minds, in people's actions, maybe taking extra security steps, preparing bunkers, polarizing in political views, addressing it directly is still complicated, and I can't see a form for it now. I think that my way of experiencing it is just feeling it as on a human level.
I am Agnė Jokšė, artist from Lithuania. I work with writing, video, performances, and queering the language. For the show at Cadiz, I am presenting a work, Daring Dreams, or Lithuanian title Ateitis ateis, which is Futures Will Come, where a bunch of young protagonists are already living in another time, somewhere in future, and speaking language which does not exist in the wider usage today yet.
Palengva minčiai sekant mintį, žinai, tada kitai, aš ėmiau suprast, kad nebegalvoju apie žmonės, kuriuos matau. Nepatau pažįstamų akių, tik svetimai ir įdėmiai žvelgiančius akis.
The important elements that I decided to work with was language. How to make the language sound or appear non-binary. Because language is such a construct which is very, very strong to mold or change or introduce something new. It's a strategy that I have no idea how, it will turn out in the future. But visitors come, they meet these new forms. For some of them, I know it's part of their reality, it's part of their everyday life. And for some people, it's something completely new. And this piece was translated by Clara Pacote, who is a French writer and translator as well, working with a non-binary language. It was very important that it would be translated accurately. So finding a way how to translate these small nuances seemed important to me.
Rinkinys, nepaisantis vieno susitikimo taško. Ir nors galime taške tame ir susitikti, nereiškia, kad sutiksime.
You cannot escape, even when constructing a utopia or a future, you cannot escape the reality you are in. You are sort of in tune with what you want to change or achieve. And where do you see the potentiality for the change? As a society, we are facing absolutely unprecedented time. Like, it's super important to somehow unite rather than divide, but as an artist, I always feel like it is important to bring in voices and stories of people that don't necessarily have the spotlight, at least on a micro scale.
The poetic approach is not escapism. It's not a way to escape reality. It's more a way to approach the emotions of a visitor.
I believe in exhibition as a spatial experience. Our body's involved, so it's not only about what we see and what we think, but also how we feel in space, how the works affect our presence, our bodies, our smells.
The first work you see is a work that's leaning against the window, so there's also this relationship with the outside of the gallery. And then you enter and you have a strong smell of herbs, and you already hear the sound of the bird before you actually see the bird in the video. So there's a progression in the narrative, and indeed there's something very atmospheric about the exhibition. We have works which will also, in a way, contaminate each other.
It was important for us to work with works which are sensitive enough to grasp the complexity of our reality. So it is composed of many things, There is still beauty even in the most tragic situations.